My name is Nanny Rosebud, and I tell stories. Have you ever told a story? Did you ever get into trouble for telling a story? The secret to not getting into trouble is to always make sure that your listeners know whether you're telling the truth or it's make-believe. Today I'm going to tell you a story from long ago in Russia. It's a Russian folktale called Stone Soup. Now, maybe you've heard this story before. There are many different versions of this story, and I always like to hear a good story again. Once I tell it to you, it will be your story, and you can tell it too. Once there was a poor family that was forced to leave their town because of drought and famine. They were the last family to leave, and as they left their town, they carried with them only the clothes on their backs, a few things in each of their pockets, and an empty pot. They traveled for many days along a long and winding, dusty road, and they were quite dusty and tired and weary themselves when they came to the next town. They hoped and prayed that as they entered that town, they would be welcomed there, and people would take kindly on them and help them reestablish a new life there in that town. But alas, it was not to be, for the baker turned them away because they were too dusty. And the produce man turned them away because they were strangers. And the butcher turned them away because they were dusty strangers and he didn't want them anywhere near the meat in his butcher shop. The seamstress wanted to welcome them, but she was just a single woman by herself, and what could she offer them? For she had clothing in her shop, but she couldn't just give them clothing without any means of payment, for she had bills to pay too. What could she do to help them? But she sadly wished them well and hoped that she could find a way to help them, but there was nothing she could do for them at that moment. The father and the mother comforted their son and daughter and said, "Don't worry, we'll go down by the river and make a camp." They went down by the river, and after they had all washed the dust off their faces and hands and feet, they took the pot of water and filled it with clean river water and brought it up to the bank on the side. The father instructed the daughter and son to go find twigs and dry leaves. The mother went out to get branches that had broken off the trees, and the father himself found larger pieces of wood that had long since fallen out of the branches and dried up. They brought the wood and the branches and the twigs and the leaves together, and the father took some stones and made a circle and built a fire inside. "But father, how are we to light this fire that you've set? We have no spark." "Oh, but I have a flint in my pocket. I didn't leave with my pockets empty. There may not be any coins in there, but we have the flint." And with that, he took the flint and another stone, lit a spark that started the dried leaves and twigs burning, and soon they had a nice fire going. Mother put the pot of water on to boil. "Mother, what are you doing with the water?" "I'm going to make stone soup," she said. "Stone soup?" said the daughter. "Yes," said the father. "When I traveled as a young boy, we often ate stone soup, and it's quite delicious." And the little son said, "Oh, I can't wait to try it." The father then got up and went down to the river's bank and took out some stones, scrubbed them in the sand, rinsed them off in the river water, and brought them back up to the fire. "How are these, mother dear?" "Oh, they look wonderful, father." And father dropped them into the boiling water, and she took a long stirring spoon out from the pockets of her apron that she was wearing. "Mother, you have a stirring spoon." "Yes, dear, I didn't leave with empty pockets, did you?" "Oh, no," said the daughter, "I didn't leave with empty pockets. I have a few things here, but I don't think they'll go with the stone soup." "Very well, we'll make do." And the mother stirred the soup with the stones and tasted the broth and said, "Oh, it's not quite ready. It needs to cook a little longer. It seems to need something, but I can't quite think of what." At about that time, The baker had closed up his shop in the village and was walking out of the village on his way to his home just on the outskirts of the village. And as it happened, the road took him by the river. There he spied the family, the roaring fire, and the boiling pot of water. "What is it that you have there in your boiling pot?" he said. "Why," Mother said, "it's stone soup, and it's very delicious." "Stone soup? I've never heard of such a thing." "Oh, why, we'd be glad to share some with you. Um, I'd be happy to serve some to you, but at the moment it's not quite done. It needs something, and I can't think of what." "Well," he said, "if you're willing to share with me, I should bring something to share too. Let me go back to my bakery shop and I'll get some rolls from the bakery and bring them right back." "Oh, that would be lovely," said Mother, "and certainly by the time you come back, it should be close to done, but not quite certain what else I need to add to it." So with that, the baker rushed back into town and opened back up his shop and took some rolls out and put them in his baker's apron and rolled them up and locked his shop again and was about to go back out. As he was going out of town, the produce seller said, "I thought I saw you leave already. You're back again. What's going on?" And he told them the story of how the poor family that had come into town earlier was down by the river, and they had bathed and were nice and clean, and they were quite kind and willing to share their stone soup. The produce man said, "Stone soup? I've never heard of it. Yes, they say it's quite delicious. I've never tried it myself, but the woman does say it is lacking something." Said the produce man. "Perhaps a carrot or an onion. I have some of each I could spare, and perhaps if I share, they'll share their soup with me as well." "Why, that's a wonderful idea," said the baker. And with that, the produce man and the baker began to head out of town back down towards the river. And on their way out, they passed the butcher. And the butcher said, "Where are you going, gentlemen, together? I thought the baker had already left, and now you've come back and you're going out together. Are you having a party?" The butcher said, "Oh, no." And the baker began to tell the story of how he was heading out of town and he saw the family that had been into town earlier, and now they were all clean and fresh, and they seemed quite friendly after all, and they were willing to share stone soup. But the woman that was making the soup said it was lacking something. So the produce man was bringing his carrot and his onion to share in the soup to see if that would help. And the butcher thought, "Why, I believe I have an extra piece of beef here. That might help." And he went into his butcher shop, to grabbed his cleaver, quickly diced up a piece of beef, wrapped it up into his butcher's apron, locked up his shop, and went out the door to join the produce seller and the baker as they were going back. On the way out of the village, the three men passed the seamstress as she was locking up her shop. Before her door was completely locked, they had told her the story of the family that had come into town. "Oh, I so wished I had been able to help them. I really wanted to do something, but I didn't know what I could do. But seeing that you're going to have some soup, why, I think you need to have some bowls and spoons and some napkins too." And with that, she unlocked the door, went back into her seamstress shop, grabbed the napkins that she had just sewn that very morning, locked her shop up, and said, "If you wait one moment, I'll go to my home 2 doors down and grab some bowls and spoons." They agreed to wait with her, and they carried the spoons and the bowls for her. She carried the napkins, and the four of them went down to the river where the family was waiting, cooking their stone soup. Well, the vegetable produce man offered his carrots and onions, and the baker set down his uh, offering of rolls for them to enjoy with the soup. The butcher said, "Here, I've some cubed beef for you," and they threw that in the pot. And they waited. And as they waited for it to cook, the mother stirred again with her long stirring spoon and said, "Oh, it's almost done, and it smells so good, doesn't it?" They all agreed that it smelled good, and the seamstress passed out the bowls and the spoons that she had brought with her and handed everyone a napkin. She had enough for them all. Soon the soup was ready, but by the time it was done, they were all fast friends, ready to enjoy a meal together. With that, the father and the mother asked that they join hands and ask a blessing over the meal, thankful that they had a delicious stone soup to share and wonderful friends to share it with. And that evening, the family went home to spend the night with the seamstress and her little home, and they soon became a part of that town, and they were all friends for a very long time. I hope you like that story, boys and girls, about stone soup, and I hope you'll share it too. Come back again to hear more stories from Nanny Rosebud.